One of the most common challenges we see after exposure to trauma is difficulties in self-regulation. The window of tolerance is a way of talking about our autonomic nervous system and how we can expand our window to feel better regulated. The window of tolerance is a concept that is often attributed to Dr. Dan Siegel, a child psychiatrist, but also people like Dr. Pat Ogden, the psychologist who developed sensory motor psychotherapy. Our window of tolerance broadly refers to our parasympathetic nervous system, or the rest and digest system. When we're in our window, we feel generally calm, focused, present, and okay about things. We may still be dealing with some stress, but the stress doesn't feel overwhelming or unmanageable. We can still think clearly about our problems and make good choices. However, if we've been exposed to significant trauma, then it becomes that much easier to pull us out of our window and out of a parasympathetic state. And that usually happens in one of three specific ways. On one hand, we might find our arousal level goes way up and our sympathetic nervous system kicks in. So you've probably heard of the fight or flight response. So we might find ourselves going into a fight mode where we become angry, irritable, jumpy, paranoid, and feel like we have too much energy. Or we go into flight mode where we want to run away and escape the situation. And we can do that by physically leaving a situation, or we might go away in our mind, which in an extreme case would be dissociation. Now, I want to emphasize that a fight and flight response are actually normal responses to threat, and everybody has them. The problem is if we find ourselves in that response when we're not actually under significant threat. It can create significant wear and tear on our nervous system over time if we spend a lot of time in fight or flight. In a high arousal state, we might also go into something called a freeze state. You can think about this as like having the gas and the brakes on at the same time. When part of us really wants to move forward, but part of us doesn't know how to move forward, so we feel really stuck and frozen. On the other hand, we might find our arousal level goes way down and we go into what's called a collapse response. This is when we might feel hopeless, helpless, overwhelmed, like we don't have any energy or capacity to do anything, and if we do, it's probably not going to work out anyway. This is like when animals are being chased in the wild and they play dead, hoping that if they collapse and stay still, the threat will eventually go away. So you might find yourself familiar in one of these different nervous system responses because we often have our go-tos. Some of us are more likely to go into fight or flight. Some of us might be more likely to freeze, and other of us might be more likely to collapse as our go-to response. The other thing that we can see a lot is if even somebody goes into fight or flight quite regularly, you can only maintain that level of high arousal for so long. And often what will happen is people will fall into a collapse response. So they yo-yo back and forth between this very high arousal and very low arousal. Again, one thing I do want to emphasize is that there is no blame or shame or judgment in any of these responses. Because they come from our autonomic nervous system, they're automatic. It's actually a good thing that these responses are automatic because it means our nervous system is kicking in automatically to keep us safe from perceived danger, even when we don't have the space and time to think consciously about it. Where we run into problems is when we end up using these strategies at times that they're not actually useful, or when they're disproportionate to the level of threat we're exposed to. It might also be the case that they're helpful in the short term, but they have some unanticipated negative long-term consequences. The good news is working to expand our window of tolerance is absolutely something that we can do. We can use certain techniques to help us feel better in the moment, and repeatedly using those tools over time can expand our window of tolerance. This means we can learn better how to self-regulate and develop emotional resilience in the face of events or interactions with other people that threaten to knock us off balance. And again, we don't want to get rid of these nervous system responses because, as I mentioned, they're actually part of a healthy functioning nervous system. But if we expand our window of tolerance, what it means is we're more likely to only use them when we actually need them. So, how do we build our window of tolerance? Well, the way we do that is to practice doing activities that increase our arousal or decrease our arousal on purpose, rather than just waiting for stress to trigger those changes. This is what we call upregulation and downregulation. And being able to alternate between the two is part of a healthy functioning nervous system. So, for example, to upregulate, we might engage in exercise that increases our heart rate, like a brisk walk, or if we're medically able and healthy to do so, then maybe some more vigorous exercise. Another way to upregulate is to dance. Just put on some music that you enjoy and dance around your house. Or listen or sing or move to high intensity music. Or play a game, especially something physical. Basically anything that engages our nervous system to go up in arousal, but on purpose and in a way that's enjoyable. Conversely, to downregulate, we might do something like taking a nice warm bath, or lay down with a weighted blanket, or spend time stroking a pet, or do some gentle stretching. The other thing that we can do is co-regulate. So when we are babies and very small children, the way that we learn how to self-regulate is actually through co-regulation first with our important people that are around us. That is, our nervous system can benefit from the calming presence of another person. In an ideal world, if we have a family member or friend or acquaintance, or even a trusted therapist that we feel safe enough with, spending even just a moment or two with them can help us feel more regulated if we pay attention to it. Pets can also be a great source of co-regulation. But if we don't have access to a person or a pet, then nature can actually be a great source of co-regulation. For example, laying down in the grass, leaning our back against the support of a tree, or putting our feet in the water. These are all things that can help ground us in the midst of chaos and provide a sense of co-regulation. The key is to practice these activities on purpose. You can think of your window of tolerance like a muscle. The more we work it, the more we build that capacity. Remembering that we all have a window of tolerance and we all get pulled out of it from time to time, and that's normal. We might be more prone to be pulled out of it if we have a significant trauma history, but that doesn't mean that we can't learn to expand our window.